Hello, this is Christy Strickler for GetItScrap.com. In this video, we're going to cover 8 voices to capture in your scrapbook journaling and titles. If you're like me, you want to capture that perfect story, but sometimes you just end up writing basic facts. Who, what, where, when, or why. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it can be far more interesting and far more fun to try to capture the voice of one of the subjects in the photo. If you are writing your scrapbook journaling or titles and you capture that subject's voice, you'll have a rich and appealing story. How often do you hear or express a sentiment like, "Let's see what she says about that," or "What did he say about that?" And you have an anticipation or a satisfaction in hearing that voice. It's not so much how that voice sounds, but it's the opinions and attitude that is conveyed. Let's take a look at some scrapbooking ideas for getting voice onto your layouts from our creative team. The first voice we're going to talk about is the diarist's voice. This is the voice that allows you to match words to pictures. You can bring a person to life by expressing their voice on the page. Ronnie Crowley says, "This page is about the books my mother remembers as favorites from her childhood. The journaling on this page is written by my mother. About 18 months before she was diagnosed with cancer, I gave her a book called Grandma Tell Me Your Memories, which was a year's worth of prompts to complete. She wasn't excited about it, and some of the prompts she responded with statements like, 'If I did, I really have no memory of it.' She did, though, complete the book, unlike my dad, who refused to complete the grandpa version. Now this book is a treasure as I'm able to match her words with pictures that I have and bring her voice alive in my scrapbooking, even though she passed away several years ago." This is a wonderful thing to do as well for those heritage photos that you have. If you know a little bit about the family member or have a connection with them and you have some of their journaling, you can create a scrapbook page with it. You can also use old letters to do this sort of diarist voice. The next 2 layouts are going to capture the young child's voice. They're going to take you back and remember those times when your kids were little. And I don't want you to get caught up in whether or not you captured exactly what they said. Paraphrasing is perfectly okay. This first layout is by Christy T, and she says, "I tend to be the organizer in my family. And one day my daughter commented that I was a bit like the queen and my husband was like my servant, which we all thought was funny. I wanted to remember that just as if she were saying it to me again. So I let her words become the long title and added extra journaling of her further explanation of what she meant. I used a mix of font styles, sizes, colors, and type to add emphasis to certain words and to keep it interesting. The stamped image was perfect to support the story. Since there is no photo of me on the page, it keeps the emphasis on my daughter's words." This next layout was created by me. It's about my son and husband on a trip to the beach. And I don't really remember exactly the conversation. This is where I mentioned paraphrasing is okay. I really wish I had written it down, and I know people advise you to keep a notepad or write notes on your phone, but it's just not something I did at the time. I scrapbooked these photos almost 6 years after I had taken them, so I definitely didn't remember everything exactly, but I did remember that my son asked if we would see any sharks while we were at the beach. I wrote my journaling in the form of a conversation between my husband and my son, definitely paraphrasing what I remembered, and I chose one of the shots of my son in the water looking as though he were searching for something. I used it along with a photo of my family swimming to support this conversation that I paraphrased from my husband and son, even though the conversation happened prior to our trip to the Gulf. So what I wanted to point out here with the child's voice, and you can even do that with the next layout we're going to talk about, and with the diarist voice. You don't necessarily have to have a photo to go with the exact conversation. You can either substitute a photo in, as I did here, or you could do something similar to what Christy did on the previous layout, in which she used a cutout of a girl who was kind of shaped like a queen. You have a lot of license to take this voice and let it guide the motifs that you're going to choose on your page. Let it guide pictures and add deeper meaning to pictures that otherwise might have been just about the date, the time, the who, what, where, and why, but didn't have that deep story. So we're continuing on with the same concept that we've basically been talking about in the prior two layouts, or the prior two voices. We now have the husband's voice. It's similar than the first two because it's putting a different perspective on things. But the wonderful thing here is that it's also going to add a little bit more for the person who is looking at the layout to see that their voice has been captured. And you also get a peek into that person's personality through the eyes of the scrapbooker who is creating it. This page was made by Stephanie Simple, and it's about a trip that they took together. She says, "I gathered photos from our trip and then copied and pasted pertinent facts about the destination from Wikipedia. I used teletype font, which is a typewriter font, for this factual journaling. Below the photos, I chose a handwriting font to render my husband's thoughts and feelings about our day trip around the town there." Our next two layouts are going to capture something called the social voice. They're similar to the previous layouts we've seen in that they're capturing the voice of someone who is speaking, someone who's important to the story in the scrapbook pages. The difference here is that they're capturing the method in which the conversation took place. This is important, I guess you could say, for future generations because it's like a time capsule. It gives them a look into how family members were communicating during a specific time frame, as well as a peek into that family member's personality. On this layout, Katie says, "My kids haven't seen my sister in 6 years, and she rarely sends birthday or Christmas presents. This page is all about a phone call she made to me before a Christmas in July visit. She wanted to ensure my kids would think she was the best aunt ever. I didn't write down the conversation as it happened, but I remember it well enough to approximate what my sister said," and she's paraphrasing, just as I mentioned it's okay to do. She continues to say, "I typed up the journaling, printed it, then cut strips of the story and placed them a bit over the page. Because our conversations are often jumbled and we jump around from topic to topic and back again. I wanted the journaling to look all over the place on the page because our phone conversations are usually all over the place as well. I used colors, Christmas colors in red and green since my sister's idea was about having a Christmas in July, and I used the phone embellishment since this was about a phone conversation." So here we have the second page that's capturing social voice. And on this page, Sue has talked about how she enjoys her son's Twitter post. She says, "He is grown up, married, and living in another state, but I still catch glimpses of his sense of humor, opinions, and attitude through social media. I printed a small collection of his tweets that best reveals his personality to create this page." We've talked a little bit about capturing the voice of our family members, but it's also important to capture the voice of our friends, and that's what Heather Awesome did on this next layout. She says, "This is one of my favorite photos from when my friends and I organized a masquerade ball at the nicest hotel in Maseru back in June. As someone without a partner or children, I thought this assignment was a good challenge because I really had to think about whose voice, other than my own, I wanted to capture. I was inspired by the suggestion to take something someone says and make it a title. My title came to me as I was journaling about my favorite part of the masquerade ball, and it perfectly captured the personality of my friend who said it." Now, if you don't have a conversation or a letter or a diary, something to inspire you to capture the voice, you can capture an imagined voice. Most of the people or even the pets that you're going to document in your scrapbook layouts, you have a good idea of what their personality is like. And you can capture that by creating an imagined conversation or something imagined that they might say. On this next layout, Audrey Tan did that with her dog. She wrote, This is about the first time we went on holiday without the dog, and I decided to do a page about him reflecting on us. As my boys and I flew out first, I can only imagine him wondering where we were. Thankfully, his breeder offered to look after him while we were overseas, which meant at least he would be reunited with his mother and siblings. So you'll notice in her journaling, she's used some thought bubbles, and the dog is saying things like, I wonder where is my mom and where are my brothers? I've not seen them for a few days. I hope they're fine. Oh dear, what's happened to me? I'm feeling sick again. My master has taken me to the vet and I'm on steroids again. And she has all these silly little quips and quirks that she thinks that her dog might say. You can do something similar with people as well, because again, you know their personality, you know what the subject might say, and it can make the page more interesting. Now we're going to capture the teasing voice, and I think this is probably the voice that captures personality the most. It captures those fun little stories, the funny things that family and friends do to one another. Debbie Hodge made this page, and she says 2 words, "Hey Nancy." That was how my brother greeted my youngest son during our February visit once he discovered Isaac's crocheting hobby. My brother is a guy's guy, and he loves to tease. He came in every day and greeted Isaac with these words, and then took him off to do carpentry projects. I see these 2 words in print, and I recall my brother's inflection, his love of teasing, and the wonderful time Isaac had with him that week. The final voice we're going to talk about is the conversational voice. And in this layout by Shion Fair, I want you to pay attention to how she has documented the journaling on the page, how it has become a part of her page design. It looks very much like something you would find in a play. And that's the wonderful thing about capturing voice, because not only can it drive the motifs you choose, it can also drive the shape that the journaling takes on the page. Shion says, this page has grown from a blog post I wrote to document a trip I made with my 4-year-old nephew. He has such a great way with words that it's easy to write a fun post using exactly what he has to say as a starting point. As I recorded my nephew's words and my replies, I realized that it felt like several acts of a play. He knew that he had made me laugh, and so we kept up our conversation in that spirit throughout our trip as we traveled on the bus and visited the cafe and the park. When it came to making my layout, I decided to present it as a theater script, complete with dog-eared edges and a stamp of a coffee spill. I emphasized this idea of a theater script with my behind-the-scenes style title. It's a play and several short scenes, just as it really happened, but I do think it's important to remember that when you were recording a voice, you are actually aiming for the spirit of the conversation. You want to get the pauses in and the flavor of the words and the verbal mannerisms which emphasize the personality of your subject. If that means a little bit of judicious editing, I think that's just fine. And she's probably referring a little bit to paraphrasing there as well, and that keeps coming up. You can get your story on the page, but it doesn't have to be the exact voice or the exact conversation that took place. These layouts originally appeared in an article for Get It Scrapped. If you'd like to see the original article and get a closer look at the layouts themselves, you can check out the link that we've included in the notes to go along with this video. For more inspiration, visit getitscrapped.com/blog.